Hello everyone. So this is a video all about the hormonal control of the oogenesis. Oogenesis is a process by which the female gamete is being developed by the reproductive cells of the ovary. So the entire oogenesis we have discussed regarding the same in the earlier videos. So in this video we will be discussing how the hormones are regulating the process of oogenesis. So as you know that oogenesis begins during the fetal life and it gets completed once the sperm enters into the secondary oocyte. So in the entire process of the oogenesis, so the oogenesis process is being regulated by the hormones, namely the hypothalamic hormones, pituitary hormones and the gonadal hormones. So it is being said that in case of the humans, the entire reproductive cycle as well as the oogenesis, so that is being regulated by these three types of the hormones. So let us get into the details of the hormones and the process of regulation of the oogenesis. So as we have discussed in the earlier video also, that whenever the gonad, the reproductive organ, requires the hormones, so that gonad sends the signal to that of the hypothalamus. So once the signals are being reached, that is during the puberty, the hypothalamus, which is the master of master gland, it releases the hormone that is called as gonadotropin releasing hormone. So this gonadotropin releasing hormone acts upon the anterior pituitary, that is basically the pars distalis, and from there this GnRH stimulates the anterior pituitary to release the hormones called as luteinizing hormone or the follicle stimulating hormone. So luteinizing hormone is also called as lutrophin, or also called lutropin. So this LH hormone acts upon the ovary. Meanwhile, the FSH also acts upon the ovary, which is the primary sex organ in case of the female. So follicle stimulating hormone, as the name itself indicates, it stimulates the follicle to grow, to develop and to mature. So that is the main function of the follicle stimulating hormone, which is involved in growth, development and maturation of the follicles. So under the influence of FSH, the follicles which are present in the ovary, namely the primordial, primary, secondary, tertiary and finally the Graafian follicle is being formed under the influence of FSH. Now the entire process of this growth and development of the follicles is called as folliculogenesis. And thereafter the LH, luteinizing hormone, also play a significant role in case of the folliculogenesis, but the main one is the FSH. On the other side, if you look after, so what happens here is, once the follicles are being grown, that is, once a matured follicle is being formed, that is a Graafian follicle, during the 14th day, the ovulation takes place under the influence of a hormone called as LH, where the increased levels of the LH, that is called as LH surge, when it occurs, then from the Graafian follicle, the secondary oocyte which is being present, so that is being released from the ovary. Later what happens is, so under the influence of the luteinizing hormone, so that ruptured Graafian follicle, the granulosa cells which are present in the Graafian follicle, so those granulosa cells under the influence of the luteinizing hormone, so they get starting converted into the luteal cells. Thereafter the proliferation of the luteal cells takes place and later the ruptured Graafian follicle gets converted into a temporary endocrine gland that is called as corpus luteum. Now this corpus luteum starts secreting the hormone called as progesterone, which is basically a steroid hormone. So what is the role of the progesterone? Progesterone, as we have discussed in the earlier videos also, it helps in maintaining the pregnancy, it helps in maintaining the endometrium. Which means, so progesterone, okay, it is being involved in the endometrial regrowth also. Which means, once the progesterone levels starts decreasing in that of the ovary, okay, once, that is the next point I have written here. Once the progesterone level starts decreasing in the ovary, so that gives a negative feedback. So thereby it inhibits the release of FSH as well as the LH. So as a result, when there is a decrease of the progesterone, the endometrium which was being formed, which is meant for the implantation, so that gets ruptured. Thereby there is a release of the blood. The blood starts oozing out of the endometrium. So that is one of the function. Okay. So thereafter, here I have mentioned endometrial regrowth. So thereafter, what happens in the next cycle? Okay. So thereafter, the second oocyte is being released again on the 14th day. So by that time, that is during the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, the endometrium starts regenerating, where the changes are being seen in the endometrium, that is increase in the blood vessels, increase in the number of glands are being seen. So that formation is being done by that of the one of the hormone that is called as progesterone. So on the other side, what happens is, in the follicles, for example, if you take the Graafian follicle, the Graafian follicle consists of the cells which are namely the theca interna cells. So theca interna cells, okay, so they have the receptors for the LH. Okay, so what happens is, once the hormone LH is being released, so the theca interna cells of the Graafian follicle will bind with that of the LH, and once the binding takes place, there is a release of androstenedione. Okay, and thereafter what happens? The granulosa cells will say, the granulosa cells also secrete another hormone, inhibin. Okay. Granulosa cells even secretes an enzyme that is called as aromatase. So that aromatase is responsible for conversion of the androstenedione into the estrogen. So that estrogen is being produced by the theca interna cells, which is being converted into that of the estrogen by the help of the granulosa cell. So what are the functions of estrogen? Estrogen is involved in the secondary sexual characters in females, such as the growth and development of the mammary glands or the breast. Second one is the growth of the pubic hair, growth of axillary hair, as well as the last one is regarding the flaring of the hips, which means after the puberty, the hip size are increasing in the size under the influence of estrogen. Next is, estrogen is involved in the endometrial regrowth, which I have already mentioned in case of the progesterone. That is, during the proliferative phase of the menstrual cycle, the estrogen increases in the number of blood vessels as well as the glands present in the endometrial region. Estrogen is also involved in ovulation to some extent, and estrogen is even involved in the calcium absorption, which means that the calcium absorption is being influenced by estrogen. So that is, when the levels of the estrogen starts decreasing, that is generally after the postmenopausal region. So that decrease in the progesterone levels decreases the calcium absorption, which enhances the calcium resorption. So thereby there is a possibility that the bone starts becoming weaker and it may result into osteoporosis. So in the puberty region, in the earlier reproductive life, so what happens is, whatever the calcium is necessary, so that is being absorbed by the help of the estrogen hormone. So on the other part, the follicles where the granulosa cells secrete the inhibin hormone. So this inhibin hormone gives a negative feedback to that of the anterior pituitary, whereas the estrogen gives a negative feedback to that of hypothalamus. So that is, entire, that is, it may be a progesterone, it may be estrogen, or it may be the inhibin. So these are the hormones which are responsible, which gives a negative feedback to that of the anterior pituitary as well as the hypothalamus. And meanwhile, the hormone which is called as lutrophin or luteinizing hormone, so that is involved in the development of the ova. It is involved in the ovulation process, and it also stimulates the production of the estrogen as well as progesterone. So this is how the entire reproductive cycles and oogenesis in females is being regulated by the various hormones secreted by the hypothalamus, anterior pituitary as well as the ovary. So this is all about today's video, that is hormonal regulation of the oogenesis. Thank you.